Hello, I am the OBG. Welcome to the OBG show. And today I'm going to be talking about the shenanigans, basically, that went on with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates. Well, I believe to be true anyway. So I think I'll kind of get straight into that. So with the COVID-19, well, okay, let's ask the question first. What happened during the COVID-19 pandemic? And I'd like to say that the thing that happened with the COVID-19 pandemic has been kind of framed by us in extremities, hard poles apart. Like on one side, you've got those who insist it was nothing more than a public health crisis handled as best as they could be under the pressure. But even if you are a straight-thinking, logical person who sides with the system, you've got to admit there's anomalies. And on the other side, there's claims that it was a deliberately orchestrated event designed to transfer wealth upwards. And neither of these perspectives, when considered in isolation, truly withstand scrutiny. And the truth is more grounded and arguably more unsettling because it doesn't rely on grand conspiracies. It relies on how the system already works. And I'll explain this now, OBG style, okay? The pandemic was not economically neutral. While millions of small businesses collapsed, unemployment surged, and entire sectors were shut down, wealth at the very top expanded at an unprecedented rate. Now, data from organisations such as Oxfam and the Institute for Policy Studies, they show that billionaire wealth increased dramatically during this period, in some cases doubling within a few years. And this outcome isn't controversial, it's widely documented. And the more important question isn't whether this happened, but why it happened. And why it happens so consistently across different countries and economies. And a significant part of the answer actually lies in a policy response. Governments and central banks intervened on a massive scale, injecting trillions into the global economy through stimulus packages, asset purchases, and emergency lending programs. And these actions, which were intended to stabilise economies and prevent total collapse, had a different effect because the mechanisms through which this money entered the systems really mattered. And much of it flowed through financial markets, inflating the values of assets such as stocks, real estate, corporate holdings, and so on. And since ownership of these assets is heavily concentrated amongst the wealthiest individuals, the result was a rapid increase in their net worth. Now, I don't want to sound as if I'm defending these monsters, because we know with all their wealth, they've become corrupt and they were doing nonsense on an island, as well as in a property in New York. But economists such as Thomas Piketty, they've long argued that without deliberate correction, capital trend tends to accumulate faster than overall economic growth, leading to increase in inequality. And similarly, Joseph Stiglitz, who's a world-renowned American economist, public economy or public policy analyst, and a professor at Columbia University, and likely one of the most influential figures in modern economic thought, and particularly known for his free market views, free market fundamentals. He has criticised the structure of modern financial systems for disproportionately. He's criticised these financial systems for disproportionately benefiting those who already had significant assets. And this is what happened here. The pandemic didn't create these dynamics, it simply accelerated them. It exposed a system in which crisis responses, even when well-intentioned, can reinforce existing imbalances. And alongside these economic shifts, there was also a broader conversation about systemic change. Figures like Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, he openly described the pandemic as an opportunity to rethink and reset aspects of global economy. Initiatives associated with this idea focused on sustainability, digital transformation, and long-term structural reform. Now, while these proposals were publicly discussed, they were often received with suspicion, and rightfully so, because we don't understand how it works. And for many of the language, and for many of the people who translate the language, the term reset suggested that decisions about the future were being shaped within elite circles. And those people are far removed from the everyday experiences of the majority, just as we are from them. And the reason I appear to defend these ideas, and I'm not, is that we are uneducated and disarmed when it comes to conversing about global economics. And this perception of elite concentration is reinforced by the overlapping networks of influence that exist at the highest levels of wealth and power. People often cite the case of Jeffrey Epstein in this context. I'm going to disappear for 4 seconds. It's an issue with the camera. So Epstein, he was a financier, later convicted of serious crimes. And he maintained connections with a wide range of influential individuals across finance, politics, academia, and technology. And there's so many stories surrounding as to why. But I think when you come to the crux of it, those people have the main goal of just making money. So they didn't care that he was a paedophile as long as the money came in. Now, Bill Gates, amongst others, has acknowledged meeting with Epstein, even though he tried some denial, saying that, he realised who he was and then stopped. And he says it was a mistake, and he said that he distanced himself from him, but the dates don't align, And we know that he understood what he was doing, To them, it's just business. And it's important to be precise, or at least in the same ballpark about what these connections do and do not imply. And the existence of overlapping social and professional networks among powerful individuals is not evidence of coordinated wrongdoing per se on a global scale, but, it does point towards them. And it highlights how influence tends to cluster. The same names, institutions, and social circles often reappear, creating an environment in which accountability can become diffuse and public trust can erode. And when such networks intersect with moments of global crisis, it isn't surprising that people begin to question how decisions are made and whose interests are ultimately being served. Now, writers such as Naomi Klein, she's explored similar themes throughout the concepts of disaster capitalism. And she argues that periods of crisis are often used to implement policies or economic shifts that might otherwise face resistance. And while this perspective is contested, it draws attention to a recurring pattern. Crises create openings for change, and with those, existing power are often positioned to shape the direction of change. However, it seems to me that their primary focus is to exploit such things for personal gain, which seems to be the case here. And by the way, Naomi Klein, she's a prominent Canadian author and social activist, and as I just found out, a filmmaker. And she's known for her influential critiques of corporate globalization, neoliberalism, and the political impacts of climate change. All fantastic, ideas. And like Noam Chomsky, in earlier decades, she's frequently mentioned as a leading voice on the contemporary left. Now, I know that she wrote Logo, what was the book called? No Logo, yeah, I remember that, in 2000, and that became a manifesto for the anti-globalization movement, and it explores how corporations transition from selling products to selling brands, often at the expense of labour rights and public space. And she also wrote several other books after that, and I don't know the names of them, but you can look her up. Anyway, none of which I mentioned previously requires the assumption that the pandemic itself was planned as an economic event. There's no credible evidence to support such a claim. What it does require is a recognition that the structures governing modern economies are not evenly balanced. When large-scale disruptions occur, they do not impact all participants equally. Instead, they tend to amplify underlying inequalities, often leaving those at the top in a stronger position. And this is clearly what happened. Well, it's not clear after trawling much information. And the pandemic can be understood less as a coordinated plot and more as a stress test, one that revealed the shape of the system with unusual clarity. And it showed how quickly wealth can concentrate under certain conditions, how policy decisions interact with existing financial structures, and how tightly interconnected elite networks can appear from the outside. And of course, how the poor always bear the brunt. Now, the real issue isn't whether there was a single unified plan behind these outcomes. There obviously was one. These business people saw the opportunity and they exploited it. Now the question is why the same pattern emerges so reliably. And until that question is addressed directly, each new crisis will continue to produce similar results, and the gap between public experience and institutional narratives will only widen. I am the OBG.